Slowly but surely, plans are being made for life after Colonel Gaddafi. The European Union has just opened a mission in the opposition stronghold of Benghazi to cement its links with the National Transitional Council. The council's leader, Mustafa Abdul Jalil, called for help to secure Libya's borders and discussed reform, health and education. But while new relationships are being forged, the NATO bombardment continues, with the latest airstrikes blasting Colonel Gaddafi's headquarters and the capital's port. But when all this is over, what kind of Libya will emerge? Who's going to rebuild it? And how far will its leaders be able to trust their new Western partners? That's what we're asking this week on Africa Today.
NATO has confirmed it intends to play a role in Libya after toppling Muammar Gaddafi. The Secretary-General Anders Fogh Rasmussen has stated Western military alliance will help in building a new Libyan government and reforming its military and security sectors. With NATO's reputation of occupation, especially in Afghanistan, many analysts believe this could turn into another takeover of oil-rich Libya. Some critics are also questioning their real intentions for helping the opposition and for how long this friendship will last. Africa Today now examines this friendship and at what cost is NATO helping Libya's revolutionary forces.
Hello, I'm Henry Bonso and welcome to Africa Today. Night after night we see the pictures of missiles striking targets and we hear that slowly but surely NATO is degrading Colonel Gaddafi's ability to make war on his own people. Meanwhile, resistance leaders say that although they welcome NATO support, this remains very much their revolution. But what does this degree of cooperation mean for the Libya that emerges from this chaos? What will the role of Western powers be when that society, its roads, bridges and infrastructure are rebuilt? And how close should the new leadership get to them? With us in the studio to discuss this are Juma El Gamati, UK Coordinator of Libya National Transitional Council, and Robert Ools, Director of the Bruges Group think tank. And by satellite from Benghazi, Press TV correspondent Roshan Mohammed Saleh. We're going to go to you first of all, Roshan, in Benghazi. It looks very, very tranquil by the waterfront there. But what is the mood in that opposition stronghold? They've just received a visit from the EU Foreign Policy Chief Cathy Ashton. What was discussed and what have you heard?
Well, obviously Benghazi is not the front line. We're a few hundred kilometers from the front line, places like Ajdabia, Misrata, and the fighting is going on in the southern mountains to the south of, the western mountains to the south of Tripoli. The mood here is, there's a sense of community. Obviously people say there's no going back to the Gaddafi era. There's a sense of rallying around and helping each other. We've just been to a military training camp this morning. Volunteers, teachers, doctors, nurses, ranks of the unemployed, all kind of training together to go to the front line or to defend Benghazi. There's a real sense of community here. The population is armed, and if Gaddafi does try and come back here at any point in the future, he's going to have a really tough time because of that. On the other hand, there are misgivings because there's a military stalemate or something of a military stalemate, and Gaddafi forces don't seem to be able to defeat the revolutionaries and vice versa. So there is a sense of foreboding that we could be moving to a next stage here, perhaps a Western ground invasion, perhaps a boost to the rebel support. So there's an air of uncertainty. Daily life does go on, schools and hospitals, they're barely functioning, but they are functioning. But there's a feeling that the status quo can't last forever.
And what have people been saying about the visit of the EU Foreign Policy Chief Cathy Ashton, and also what Anders Fogh Rasmussen, the NATO Secretary-General, has been saying, that NATO will play a role in the reconstruction or the new agenda of the new Libya?
Well, I think Eastern Libyans view this as a battle for national survival, so they'll take help from anywhere they can get it, and they would have preferred that help to come from Arab and Muslim countries, but because it wasn't forthcoming, they had to go to the West, and they're very uneasy about that. They're very uneasy about accepting money and accepting any kind of help from the West, because they realize fully well what the West has done in places like Iraq and places like Gaza, and they consider the Arabs to be one people, Muslims to be one people. However, at the moment they're happy because they feel that anybody who helps them build up their institutions, secure their borders and fight Gaddafi is welcome.
Roshan, for the moment from Benghazi, thank you very much. Let's put some of that to you here in the studio. Juma El Gamati, you represent the Libya National Transitional Council here in the UK. How concerned are you by the fact that NATO, which is an accursed organisation in some parts of the Arab world, is so tightly connected with your colleagues in Benghazi, with the potential for future reconstruction in that country?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that the campaign that has been going on is only an air campaign. There is no NATO troops on the ground. There is no invasion of Libya. There is no occupation of Libya, and that shall remain. The Libyan people made it very, very clear, and also the National Transitional Council, that we will never accept boots on the ground. We will never accept foreign troops on our soil.
Even if it's only boots on the ground that can end the stalemate, because we've had how many months of bombardment so far?
We are absolutely confident that we will end this stalemate. The Libyan people are determined. The will is very strong. Things are turning. We are approaching the tipping point, and Gaddafi is losing. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when Gaddafi will totally lose and leave power and be totally removed with his aides and his sons and his regime. So we are absolutely confident about that. The Libyan people have paid a lot of sacrifice so far, and they are willing to pay more for the very, very dear price, which is freedom. And we are going to pursue it until the end without having any foreign troops on Libyan soil.
Let's bring you in, Robert Oels, director of the Bruges Group. You're a think tank, Bruges, of course, being in Belgium as well, so you've got a European perspective on this. What about this meeting that Cathy Ashton had with Mustafa Abdul Jalil just a day or so ago? What do you think that was really about?
Well, it wasn't long ago that Baroness Cathy Ashton was meeting with Colonel Gaddafi, but basically there is plans to get involved and help with the reconstruction of Libya, and there already is troops on the ground. There are British troops involved in the training of the anti-Gaddafi forces, so there is already Western involvement, and of course the Obama administration has had people talking to the anti-Gaddafi forces for quite some time now, for well over a month. So there is these plans to get involved, and that's what needs to be happening ultimately under NATO and UN auspices to help with the reconstruction of Libya.
It sounds very benign. I mean, a country has been battered. You've helped to degrade the infrastructure because you're trying to help the people who you think should take over the country in the future. But is there something else going on? Because, I mean, we have this concept of enlightened self-interest. Everything is in the national interest. When the UK gets involved in a country, it's because they think there is something to gain as well as something to fear. When the United States does that, there's certainly that at the core of it. What do you think is really happening?
Well, although despite the more recent cozying up between Western governments and Colonel Gaddafi, which happened a number of years ago, Colonel Gaddafi has been a long-standing foe of many Western countries, aiding terrorism.
I saw him in Rome. I wasn't there personally, but he was cozying up to Berlusconi, the Prime Minister there. He's cozied up to Sarkozy, the President of France. All very recently, and Tony Blair.
And, of course, Tony Blair.
Gordon Brown.
Herman Van Rompuy, the President of the European Commission, the European Union. There has been this cozying up to him.
And that's why people are suspicious, isn't it?
Well, that was recognised that was a mistake. We shouldn't have been dealing with this terrible man. We should have been opposing him, and we are now finally, and hopefully making him pay for the terrorism which he's committed in Britain with the blowing up of the Lockerbie bomb, the Pan Am flight over Lockerbie in Scotland, his aiding of the IRA terrorists, his planting of bombs in Germany. Really, this man has a terrible record, both in Libya and abroad, and we should be doing the utmost that we can to remove him.
When the Europeans look at the leaders of the Libya National Transitional Council, what do they see? People who they can do business with, or, well, the least worst option at the moment, we'll get to know them properly later?
Well, we need to be getting to know them, all the forces that are involved, those that are coming forward and those that may be a little bit more reticent in getting to know the Western powers, because there is mission creep involved. It was originally said that there wouldn't be troops on the ground. That has happened already. There it is happened. There's the training involved of rebel forces.
Agree with you.
Well, the training is a fact.
That's a totally false information. The fact is that France, Italy, the United States, Britain, the EU, and many other countries are opening diplomatic missions in Benghazi, and part of those diplomatic missions are military advisors. There might be tens of military advisors. That does not exactly count as an occupation army of Libya, does it? That's a total misrepresentation of the facts. There are no troops in the ground. There are no foreign troops occupying Libya or invading Libya or fighting alongside the Libyan fighters. These are the facts.
That may be needed to break the deadlock, because the Libyan people are suffering as a result of this deadlock, and we've got involved, but rightly or wrongly, I believe rightly, and we've got to follow through and finish off Gaddafi forces.
Two or 3 weeks ago, when Misrata was really suffering, and Gaddafi was shelling Misrata, and the people of Misrata were cornered in one part of it, people said maybe we need an invasion force to break the deadlock. We did not allow it. It did not come in. And the people of Misrata, the brave fighters of Misrata, defeated Gaddafi. And now they are pushing 50 kilometers east of Misrata and 30 kilometers east of Misrata. And Misrata is protected and has won the battle against Gaddafi. We did not need invasion forces. At the moment, we do not need invasion forces, and we will not need them, and we will not allow them.
Robert, before you come back in, let's go back to Roshan Mohammed Saleh, our correspondent in Benghazi. Roshan, Juma has just listed a number of European powers who have opened missions with some military wings, as it were, in Benghazi. Have you been to any of these missions, and do you get a sense of what they're really doing in Benghazi?
Well, actually, they're all based in a hotel just behind me called the Tibesti Hotel. All the foreign delegations are there, and they tend to be mainly Western ones. I have asked around, and it's a bit nebulous. It's a bit vague what they're doing. They say it's obviously not a military operation. They're just helping in institution building. But it is obvious that the Western powers, especially, are really getting their tentacles into this area in preparation for the post-Gaddafi era. And I think perhaps the Arab and Muslim nations have missed a trick, in the sense that it looks like the Western nations will be best placed to profit from Libya's future development. But I also want to just go back to one thing the guest was saying, your Libyan guest in the studio, because there was an opinion poll done here, released by a local university, which actually addressed the question of Western ground troops. And it concluded something like half the population of eastern Libya is against and half is for. But a lot of people suspect here, why was that opinion poll conducted in the first place? Is it so that the population here is public opinion being prepared for an eventual ground invasion somewhere along the line?
And can you tell us a bit more about that sense that the Western organisations are coming in and are ready to profit from the rebuilding, the reconstruction? What industries are we talking about? What kinds of companies are we talking about? Because we saw this happen in Iraq, and of course it's happening in Afghanistan. What are people saying?
Well, I haven't got a list of the companies. Obviously, all companies are interested in the future pickings from, post-Gaddafi Libya. I suppose construction companies. Catherine Ashton was talking about developing the health sector, the education sector, helping to secure Libya's borders. I think I can only repeat what I said before, in the sense that I think people in this part of Libya, they know what the West is all about. They know that the West armed Gaddafi, but at the same time, no one else seems to be offering them help, so they've taken the decision collectively to take this help, and at a later time they might have to fight the West, or they might have to try to outmaneuver the West if the West is going to try and take over their country.
Roshan Mohammed Saleh in Benghazi, our correspondent there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Juma, you want to come back in?
Yes, I just want to reiterate this point, and this is absolutely unanimous. There is a consensus about this among Libyans. We have learned from other experiences. We will never ever allow an invasion or occupation of Libya. As for the cooperation with the West and Europe in particular, look, you have to remember the geopolitics of Libya. Libya, over thousands of years, have interacted with Europe. We are on the Mediterranean. We are a Mediterranean country. We're a stone throw away from France and Italy and Greece and Turkey and Spain. And over thousands of years, you go to the shores of Libya, you will find these these ruins of Phoenicians,
Yes.
Greeks and Romans, and for the last 61 years since Libya has been independent, we have always interacted with European countries, with European companies. Oil companies have always come from the West to develop Libyan oil. We sell it to the West. We sell it to countries like Italy and Spain and Switzerland.
So nothing to fear.
Nothing to fear. It's just normal. And in fact, post-Gaddafi, the relationship with Europe will be much closer, much balanced, much respect for both interests. There will be no more illegal immigration, which is a very sore point between the relations, and it will be a much better balance based on respect.
Robert is itching to get back in.
Of course.
There will need to be help provided with the reconstruction. It wouldn't be an occupation, it would be a reconstruction and hopefully a partnership with the new Libyan government. But there really does need to be a strong Western presence, because Libya is a plural nation. It has many different groups, many different tribes, and we can't run the risk of there being a power vacuum and Libya becoming a failed state like what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, where Western forces went in, removed the previous administration and thought, job done. Well, no, it wasn't, because we just cannot run that risk
So
of
what
going
does a
in
strong
and wrecking
Western
another
presence actually look like? What kinds of people need to be there? What kind of institutions do they need to build? What will it look like? Because there was a great dispute about it before in the previous invasion in Iraq, as you say, and we want to make sure, if this happens, that it's done properly this time.
It wouldn't be legally an occupation, hopefully, like what happened in Iraq, but it would be a matter where NATO forces and perhaps even the UN, if they can make their mind up, would get involved and help with security, help with protecting the borders, help with making sure that there's proper infrastructure as well, and rebuilding the country, which we have helped to damage.
It's easy to rebuild roads.
Removing Gaddafi.
When you've got a road that's broken, you know what to do. When it's a bridge, you know what to do. When it's a plant, you know what to do. But when it comes to people and institutions and the integrity of the nation, much more difficult.
There many troops would be needed to help the new Libyan regime restore law and order. That was one of the things which went wrong in Iraq, was that there wasn't enough soldiers on the ground,
so
and in
troops.
Afghanistan to help with security. In partnership with the new regime, I think that will happen. That will be inevitable. There is a great deal of mission creep. We were originally told that there wouldn't be any soldiers on the ground there, any boots on the ground. Of course, there is in a minor capacity, of course, but there is greatly increasing involvement, and that is to the benefit.
It sounds almost like a protectorate would have to be established. Juma, would you...
A partnership.
I was hoping to get my say as well.
Yes,
because
indeed.
we're running out of time.
Indeed.
Yes, absolutely no need for foreign troops. Let me reiterate again, we are learning the lessons of other countries, okay? Libya is not as divided as your guest is trying to portray. Libya is not Iraq. The Libyan society and Libyan people...
It's currently divided now between Gaddafi forces and anti-Gaddafi forces.
Yeah, but Gaddafi forces are only a few thousands against 6 million. Okay, we have plans in place already to stabilize the country straight away, to recall the police force, the security forces, all the civil service. That's the learning lesson of other countries. We are not going to decimate the whole institutions of the country, and also be as inclusive as possible. In fact, very inclusive. We are saying that only those few hundred people who have blood on their hand, who worked with Gaddafi and were involved in killings, will be excluded. Everybody else is welcome to be included.
It will be down to NATO to take them to the International Criminal Court to be tried.
Yeah, those are
the
few
Gaddafi
hundreds.
mercenaries.
Those are few hundreds out of hundreds of thousands who were working in state institutions. All these will be included in the stabilization and the transition period, which will be 6 months to a year maximum, during which the Libyan people will have a national council, will draw a constitution, a democratic constitution. This constitution will be subject to a ballot by the Libyan people. Once it's approved, the constitution will provide the framework for the permanent status of the new constitutional, civil, democratic Libyan political system.
Have you got that off your chest?
No.
You were desperate. You were really.
You're very
absolutely very keen to make that point. But still, there are concerns.
No, because people keep just drawing parallels and saying, "Oh, Libya is another Iraq." Libya is not another Iraq. It is not like Iraq. Yes, I mean they are very, very few similarities. There are people are ignorant of the culture, of the demography, of the political makeup, of the political landscape, of the geography, of everything. If people make a bit more effort, they'll find that we don't have the ethnic or the religious or all other diverse problems that Iraq had. We don't have that. And we are aware of all the problems that happened in Iraq, and we are taking that into account. That's why we will never allow troops on the ground. That's why we are going to recall everybody who was part of the country institutions or state institutions to come back to report back to their jobs and take part in the stabilization of the country immediately the day after Gaddafi is removed.
And when do you think that will be? Think about it, because we've had a number of senior military officials, retired admirals, who are saying that there needs to be a change in the strategy. It's not working at the moment because NATO is bombing and bombing and bombing. Colonel Gaddafi, one doesn't know where he is, but at the moment there is no sign of him stepping down.
Okay. The fight is now totally taken to Gaddafi in the west of Libya, okay? Now we are talking about Misrata has made great gains against Gaddafi. He's retreated there. The Western Mountain is making great gains against Gaddafi. Now we are talking about the city of Zlitan is only 140 kilometers away from Tripoli. The Western Mountain is only 100 kilometers away from Tripoli. We're not talking about Ajdabia, which is 850 kilometers away from Tripoli. We're talking about taking the fight right to Gaddafi in Tripoli. Give it few weeks and you will see that the dynamics are totally changing in the favor of the Libyan people.
Right.
Obviously, there will be difficulties ahead. I'm not saying it's going to be a smooth sailing, but one thing is for sure, Gaddafi will be out and removed, and it's only a matter. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I think I'm giving it hopefully few weeks. Okay. People might say a few months.
Yeah. Your optimism is to be applauded.
Absolutely.
But of course, half your people, as we know from the opinion poll, agree with you. Half of them don't. And we've learned.
No,
we've learned. If I may, because you've been. It's my turn now. We've learned from hard experience from Iraq and Afghanistan that really that leaving.
Let him finish his point.
If the people at the top are removed and you think it's all going to be well, then there's a different situation.
But you can see why things can be very concerned, lest people get the impression that it's Westerners who are rebuilding Libya. They don't want that. They don't want anyone to think that it's a Western-led operation. People want to believe that it's a Libyan-led operation with Western support.
It is ultimately a Libyan uprising. The Libyan people, the people of Benghazi, stood up to Colonel Gaddafi, suffered terribly, and the revolution has taken from there. But really, when it comes to military leadership, that would have to be supplied by NATO, because that's where the assets are, that's where the training is, and the hard experience from dealing with situations in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I promise you, we will come back here again after Gaddafi is removed, and you will find out that there will be no military occupation or support by Western countries in Libya. The security of Libya will be maintained by the Libyan people. I am absolutely sure about that, because there are plans already in place, and the Libyan people are very, very determined to protect the sovereignty of their country. That is almost as important to us as removing Gaddafi's terror.
It is appropriate that we, of course, hope for the best, but also at the same time plan for the worst. So let's be prepared. Let's not be caught on the hoof if there is any problems in the post-Gaddafi era. But let's hope that all will be well. But of course, we need to be prepared just in case it won't be.
I think that's a natural end. Thank you very much indeed. And that's it for today. Thanks to all those of you who sent in comments to us. Email africa@presstv.co.uk or text us to this number +44 7800 008086. Messages will be charged at your local operator rates. Many thanks to our guests. They were Juma El Gamatav, UK Coordinator, National Transitional Council, Robert Oles, Director of the Bruges Group, and from Benghazi, our correspondent, Roshan Mohammed Saleh. Voice is back next week for another edition of Africa Today. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and on behalf of the whole team, thanks again for watching.